Okay, so I'm going to go through the review. I'll try to get as many as I can get done on this first one. I'd like to try to get through the first three, and then we'll move on to the other ones. So these are all the identities. I believe there's one of these on the test. So when you look at these, there's probably going to be one that either has like a 3x or a 2x, or down here a 4x. So you want to start with that side, and you want to break it up into something that you can work with. So if it's 3x, you don't have any formulas for 3x. But you do know you can write this as the sine of 2x plus 1x. Okay, so all I'm doing is rewriting the sine of 3x is 2x plus x. Then I have to use my sum formula. I have the sine of one angle plus another angle. On your note sheet, it's the sine of u plus v. But what does that say? So if you go to your note sheet, the sine of one angle plus another angle, it says you take the sine of the first angle times the cosine of the second angle plus the cosine of the first angle times the sine of the second angle. So all I'm doing is plugging in using my formula, the sine of the first times the cosine of the second plus the cosine of the first times the sine of the second. Okay, so that really gets me to this, which remember I know what I'm trying to get to in my identity. So I look at that and see that all of these have signs of x's. They don't have two x's. So I need to replace this, and I need to replace that. So I go to my reference sheet again. The sine of 2x is equal to 2 sine of x times the cosine of x. So I'm replacing this with that. I still have times the cosine of x. Plus, when I take this underlined thing, I have several choices. And you really, I think it'll work with any of them. But when I look up here and see that, well, I wanted everything in terms of sine or sine squared, I go to my reference sheet, my formula sheet, and I'm going to use the one that only deals with sine squared. So it's 1 minus 2 sine squared x. And again, that's still times the sine of x. So I replace this with its formula. I replace that with its formula. Now it's a little confusing what you get when you multiply these in. This is all multiplication. 2 times sine times cosine times cosine. So I can put that together and just say it's really the sine of 2x and cosine squared of x. I'm just rewriting that with cosine times cosine being cosine squared. That's different than over here because over here I have a binomial, so I have to FOIL or distribute that sine of x. So I'm going to get the sine of x minus 2 sine cubed of x. Okay, so that's a little bit different to get the sine cubed. I don't really want a sine cubed, but I have to write that down if I'm going to distribute that sine. All right, so now I'm looking to see what can I do with this, looking where I want to go. Well, when I look at where I'm trying to go, I see that it's the sine of x times something. So if I go down here, I have 3 terms. They all have a sine of x in common. So I'm going to factor out a sine of x because that's part of what I want. I want it to be the sine of x times a quantity. So if I take the sine of x out of here, 2 cosine squared, take the sine of x out of here, plus 1, take a sine of x out of there, I get minus 2 sine squared. All right, so that at least gives me that piece that I'm looking for. Now I need to try to get this to look like this. So what does this have? It has only sine squareds, so that would be okay. It has a number, so the 1 would be okay. I probably need to do something with this cosine squared. So what do we know cosine squared is? Cosine squared is 1 minus the sine squared. So it's just the cosine squared of x is the same thing as 1 minus the sine squared. So I have 2 times that plus 1 minus 2 sine squared. Okay, so I've replaced the cosine squared with that. All right, now I can distribute the 2. So I still have that sine of x out front. I'm going to get 2 minus 2 sine squared plus 1 minus 2 sine squared. So all I did is I distributed the 2 to each of those terms. And now when I add like terms, 2 plus 1 is 3. So I saw the sine of x out in front. I get 3. When I add these together, they're like terms, I get negative 4 of them. And that's where I was trying to get to. Sine of x times 3 minus 4 sine squared. I'm done. So again, what did I do? I wrote this as 2x plus x. I used my formula for the sine of one angle plus another angle. Anywhere where I saw 2x, I replaced it with something. I picked sine squared because that's what I was trying to get to. I rewrote this. This is just 2 sine cosine squared. I distributed the sine of x there. Then I went to what I'm trying to prove, and I knew I wanted to get a sine out of there, so I factored out the sine right away. Got to here. I knew what was in the parentheses. I only wanted sine squared of x, so I replaced that with 1 minus the sine squared. I distributed, and I added like terms. Okay? All right. That was a long one. All right, number 2. 2 is we don't have a formula for the cosecant of 2x, but we do have one for the sine of 2x. So I'm going to think of this as 2 times 1 over the sine of 2x. Now, if you don't like leaving this 2 out in front of there, if you take 2 times this, it's really 2 over sine of 2x. You're multiplying it by 2 over 1, so you get 2 in the numerator over the sine of 2x in the denominator. So some people liked it like this better. Now, the 2's here do not cancel because this is the sine of 2x. So we have a formula for that. Go to your formula sheet. It says the sine of 2x is 2 times the sine of x times the cosine of x. So I just replace this with what it equals. And then I see, oh yeah, the 2's cancel. So I'm left with 1 over the sine of x times the cosine of x. And that really looks like that's all I can do with that. So then I kind of I'm stumped at this point. I go back up to what I'm trying to prove. I want to prove that it equals the cosecant squared, which is 1 over the sine squared, times the tangent, which is sine over cosine. So if I look at this, this is where I'm at. If I want to get, let's say, sine over cosine, I need to multiply by sine x over sine x. I'm just multiplying by 1, so that's okay. So I get the sine of x over, down here I'm going to get sine squared times cosine. Now remember, I don't want to cancel out the signs because then I just get right back to where I started with. So I'm looking at where I'm trying to get to. So if I break this up and say, okay, I'm going to take the sine over cosine, I'm going to kind of put that separate because that's tangent. What would be left? Well, I'd have to have a 1 up here, so I'm just left with sine. Down here I'd have to have a sine squared. So I haven't changed anything. I still have sine of x and then sine squared cosine on the bottom. I just took this and split it up into 2 separate fractions that are multiplied together. This now is the tangent of x, and this is the cosecant squared of x. And I'm done. So really this one's pretty easy, just realizing that cosecant is 1 over the sine, replacing the sine of 2x, and then realizing to get to where you want to go, you had to multiply by sine over sine, and then break it up so that you had the tangent and the cosecant. All right, and then the last one on this page, sine of 4x. I wrote as the sine of 2 times 2x. I used the double angle formula, so that's 2. And so that tells me, if I go to my formula sheet again, sine of 2 times any angle is 2 times the sine of that angle times the cosine of that angle. So since my angle is 2x, I need to go to my formula. Sine of 2x, or 2u, we called it on the formula sheet, is equal to 2 times the sine of that angle, which is 2x, times the cosine of that angle, which is 2x. Now I have formulas for those. So sine of 2x is 2 sine x cosine x. I have an option for this one. If you kind of look at where you're trying to get to, that is one of the answers, 2 cosine squared x minus 1. So I'm replacing this with what's in parentheses. I'm replacing this with what's in parentheses. Look where I'm trying to go. Well, if this is 2 times this, I can multiply these two things together first. So 2 times 2 is 4 sine x cosine x. And then I still have my 2 cosine squared minus 1. And that's it. I'm done. Squared x. Okay, so that was a pretty quick one if you do it double angle. Okay, so that's the first page. I'll do another video for the next page.